Ralph Kerns was born on July 24, 1919, in the town of Acme in Alberta, Canada. The farming community was small, but was only located a few miles north of Calgary. Ralph was born to his parents, Robert and Cora, and was the sixth of 8 children. Ralph was one of 6 boys and only had one older sister. The details of Ralph's early years are difficult to piece together as sources are scarce. Details from the 1921 Census of Canada reveal part of the issue, as the family moved between the United States and Canada often. Both Robert and Cora were born in the United States and had their first child, John, while living in America. Once the family was settled in Canada, Robert supported his wife and children by working as a farmer. Ralph continued to live in Acme and went to school at the local Acme school throughout his early years. While in school, he was noted as a prominent baseball and softball player. He graduated from Acme School, likely in 1937 or 1938, and looked to take the next step in life. While the small town of Acme provided little opportunities for him, the United States offered much more. One of Ralph's uncles lived in Farmington, a small community north of Pullman, Washington, which provided Ralph an opportunity to attend college. In June 1938, Ralph packed up his belongings and made the move south. On June 17th, he arrived in Eastport, Idaho, to begin college and life in the United States. Much like his early years, Ralph's college experience left behind only a few sources that tell part of his story. He did not begin attending WSC immediately upon arriving in the United States, as he likely took time to work on his uncle's farm. Nevertheless, Ralph was far from lonely when he began school, as his brothers, Henry and Jean, attended WSC as well. Ralph began his first year at WSC in the fall of 1939 and spent his opening semesters as a physical education major. While he did not become a member of an official fraternity, Ralph was associated in Greek social circles and was a well-liked student. In his second semester, he was invited to a fireside gathering hosted by members of the Delta Sigma Zeta sorority and was the lone attendee not affiliated with an organization. Kerns temporarily left WSC after his freshman year, missing the 1940 and 1941 school year, but returned in the fall of 1941. It is unknown why he left, but when Kerns returned to school, he had switched majors to metallurgy. Back for his sophomore year, he became involved with the Independent Men's Association, a group that competed alongside fraternities in intramural sports. Around Thanksgiving 1941, Ralph and his brother Henry participated with the rest of the IMA team in a race known as the Turkey Trot, helping IMA capture a victory over competing fraternities. Aside from athletics, Kerns showcased another talent during his years in Pullman. According to his mother, Ralph sang in a local choir and had a very low bass voice. She also noted his favorite song was the hymn, The Rugged Old Cross. Ralph showed a dedication to his faith as his mother mentioned that he avoided drinking, gambling, and smoking during his college years. Despite being back in school and primed to complete his education, the attack on Pearl Harbor changed Ralph's plans forever. With the United States now at war, millions of men were needed to quickly build up the armed forces. Kerns, despite his Canadian birth, was no different than his American counterparts as he soon received the call of duty. In February 1942, he was drafted into the U.S. Army and soon began his training. He was first stationed at Camp Walters, Texas, where he displayed a remarkable talent for sharpshooting. A Canadian newspaper proudly reported that Ralph was the first in his regiment to win a medal for marksmanship. Ralph continued to progress rapidly throughout his training and displayed a great deal of potential. He turned down an opportunity to become a sharpshooter as he desired to become a technical sergeant. While he was in Texas, a group of scouts arrived at camp looking for volunteers to join the paratroopers. Kerns was interested in the unit, and after he volunteered, he was sent down to Fort Benning, Georgia for additional training.
American parachutists are fighting today from Port Moresby to North Africa. They're trained to battle in any part of the world, in any climate, on any terrain, desert or snow. The training is tough. So is the job.
Becoming a paratrooper was particularly intensive, and the training rooted out a significant number of volunteers. In Ralph's group, 1/3 of the men quit after they were injured or could not handle the rigors of paratrooper training. Ralph made it through the training as he enjoyed the exercises and never made a poor jump. In late 1942, Kerns was ready to deploy overseas with the first contingent of men, but was held back. He had contracted malaria while he was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a setback that kept them from deploying until April 1943. This time was well spent as Ralph was able to make his second and final trip to his parents. While this was a relaxing time for Kerns, this peace was temporary as he was finally sent to the North African theater of war. Though he did not join them in their first action, the unit that Ralph was attached to was the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Division. The regiment was considered young since it was activated in 1942, and because the men of the 504th were particularly young in comparison to other soldiers. Despite their youth, the unit proved to be successful in combat, and were nicknamed the Devils in Baggy Pants. Kerns eventually arrived in North Africa, but arrived in Casablanca the day fighting ended in the theater. He jokingly remarked to his family that the enemy left because they knew he was coming. With North Africa secured, the next step for the Allies was an invasion of Italy, beginning with the island of Sicily. Ralph was soon sent to Algiers for training leading up to the invasion. Concluding on January 9th, the men were moved to Malta, where they prepared for their part in the upcoming operation. On July 10th, 170,000 Allied soldiers landed in Sicily, where they were soon followed by 2,200 airdrop paratroopers. The initial landings were harassed by German aircraft, creating a tense atmosphere for Allied gunners that had dire consequences for the upcoming operation. A second paratrooper airdrop was planned for July 10th, but was hastily moved to the following day, creating confusion and miscommunication with the Allied ships surrounding Sicily. A force of C-47 and C-53 transport planes took off the night of July 11th, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. In the darkness, the planes bore resemblance to German bombers, and Allied gunners quickly opened up a withering amount of fire on the planes. Dozens of planes were struck by the barrage, and were destroyed as they exploded in midair or crashed into the ocean. In total, the US suffered 318 casualties, and lost 23 planes in one of the worst friendly fire incidents in American history. Ralph was among the many paratroopers killed by friendly fire on July 11th, as his transport plane caught fire and fell into the Mediterranean Sea. However, the truth surrounding Ralph's fate was not initially known. The War Department first reported to the Kerns family that Ralph had gone missing on July 11th, before a corrected report stated that he had been killed in action on July 24th. In June 1949, the Kerns family received a third and final report stating that Ralph was killed on July 11th and buried on July 24th, 1943. Ralph Kerns was 24 years old at the time of his death. Ralph was later reburied at the Mountain View Cemetery in Walla Walla, Washington. In the years following the war, Ralph was recognized in the WSU Veterans Memorial, representing one of the many WSC students who fell during World War II.